Ford just dropped a bombshell announcement and threatened Donald Trump in a move no one saw coming. The message? They're done playing by his rules. This is not just a typical press release, it's an open challenge to Trump's America First policies. In one swift move, Ford has upped the stakes, and Trump isn't taking it lightly. Trump is not holding back his outrage. But why did Ford take such a bold risk? And what was the announcement? And most importantly, how will this impact the future of American jobs, industry, and even you? Believe me, you never expect what Ford said. What's happening? Ford's bold announcement sent shockwaves across the nation. At first glance, it seemed like a typical corporate update until the details emerged. In a move that many saw as a direct challenge to Donald Trump's economic policies, Ford announced plans to shift a significant portion of its electric vehicle production overseas. For a company long seen as a symbol of American manufacturing, this decision felt like a slap in the face. But where did this come from? The tension had been brewing for months. Trump's tariffs on imported materials had driven up costs for manufacturers across the board, squeezing margins in an already competitive automotive market. For Ford, a company balancing legacy and innovation, the strain became too much to bear. Their leadership decided it was time to prioritize global competitiveness over nationalist optics. Yet Ford didn't stop at logistics. They framed their decision as a commitment to sustainability and progress. By ramping up EV production in markets like Europe and Asia, they aim to position themselves as a leader in the global green revolution. But to Trump and his supporters, it wasn't just a business decision, it was a betrayal, and this goes far deeper than you think. The root cause. The roots of this conflict dig deep into Trump's policies and Ford's shifting priorities. During his presidency, Trump championed a protectionist agenda, imposing tariffs and urging companies to buy American, hire American. For years, Ford appeared to align with this vision, keeping many of its manufacturing jobs on US soil. But the global market doesn't operate in a vacuum. The reality is that EVs, the future of the auto industry, require resources like lithium and cobalt, much of which is sourced and processed overseas. Trump's tariffs on these materials, coupled with supply chain disruptions, made domestic production increasingly expensive. Ford's decision to expand production abroad wasn't just about cutting costs, it was a survival strategy. Yet the timing couldn't have been worse. Trump has been vocal about his plans for a political comeback, and Ford's move provided ammunition for his campaign rhetoric. In a fiery rally shortly after the announcement, Trump declared, "Ford has turned its back on the American worker. They're shipping your jobs overseas while you're left to pick up the pieces." For Ford, the stakes couldn't be higher. They're not just competing with traditional rivals like General Motors, but also battling Tesla, which has capitalized on its American-made branding. The pressure to innovate while navigating political landmines has left Ford walking a tightrope. The escalation begins. Trump's response to Ford's announcement was as explosive as expected. At a rally reminiscent of his presidential campaigns, Trump turned his ire into a rallying cry. "We built Ford. The American worker built Ford. And this is how they repay us?" he thundered, the crowd roaring in agreement. His words weren't just criticism, they were a declaration of war. Ford, however, was prepared. In a carefully worded press release, the company emphasized their commitment to American jobs, pointing out ongoing investments in US-based EV infrastructure. But they didn't back down from their decision to expand abroad, framing it as a necessary step to remain competitive in an evolving market. The media frenzy only added fuel to the fire. Partisan news outlets took sides, with some praising Ford's bold embrace of global sustainability and others echoing Trump's claims of corporate betrayal. Social media became a battleground, with debates raging over whether Ford was a visionary company adapting to modern challenges or a symbol of corporate greed. The fallout. As the dust settled from the initial announcement, the ripple effects began to spread. Farmers, factory workers, and small-town business owners, many of whom rely on Ford's presence in their communities, found themselves grappling with the implications. Would Ford's shift abroad mean job losses in the US? Or could their investments in EV technology create new opportunities? Politicians from both sides of the aisle seized the moment. Trump's allies rallied to his side, calling for punitive measures against companies outsourcing jobs. Meanwhile, progressive lawmakers highlighted the importance of sustainability and global competitiveness, painting Ford's move as a necessary step toward a greener future. But this isn't just about jobs or politics, it's about the soul of American industry. Ford's decision raises questions that go far beyond the automotive sector. What does it mean to be an American company in a globalized world? And how do we balance progress with tradition? As the conflict unfolds, one thing is clear: this is only the beginning. The next moves from Ford and Trump could reshape not just their own legacies, but the future of American manufacturing itself. Ford's defiance has set the stage for a high-stakes battle, but the real question is, how far is Trump willing to go to regain control, and what will it mean for the future of American industry? The clash is only heating up. The war of words. The conflict between Ford Motor Company and Donald Trump had only just begun. As news of Ford's announcement spread like wildfire, Trump doubled down on his criticism, transforming the disagreement into a spectacle of national importance. At rally after rally, he took aim at Ford's leadership, accusing them of betraying the American worker and abandoning the values that had made the company an icon. "This isn't just about one company," Trump declared. "It's about whether we're going to stand up for America or let the globalists take over." Ford's leadership, however, remained steady. In public statements, they refused to engage directly with Trump's accusations. Instead, they chose to focus on their vision for the future, a transition to sustainable technology that they argued was essential for the survival of the automotive industry. Ford's chief executive officer, James Farley, emphasized that the company's decision was driven by necessity, not disloyalty. "We are committed to being a leader in electric vehicles, and to do that, we must operate on a global scale," he stated in a televised interview. But Trump was relentless. He used every platform at his disposal, from televised appearances to his social media channels, to escalate the rhetoric. "Ford is selling out our country," he posted, his words quickly shared by millions. Supporters flocked to online forums, calling for boycotts of Ford vehicles and urging Americans to buy from other manufacturers. The media, as expected, seized the opportunity to amplify the drama. Conservative outlets aligned with Trump's perspective, portraying Ford's move as emblematic of a broader corporate disregard for American values. Progressive outlets, on the other hand, framed the issue as a necessary evolution for a company trying to stay ahead in a fiercely competitive industry. Television pundits debated the implications for hours, with one side lamenting the loss of manufacturing jobs and the other praising Ford's commitment to sustainability. Amid the noise, the real question loomed larger. Was this simply a clash between two powerhouses, or did it symbolize a deeper divide in the nation's economic and cultural identity? The stakes for Ford. For Ford Motor Company, the stakes were monumental. This was not merely about surviving a public relations storm. It was about the future of the company and its place in the automotive industry. The decision to expand electric vehicle production overseas was not made lightly. It was a strategic move designed to secure Ford's position as a leader in the global market, particularly as the industry underwent a seismic shift towards sustainable energy. The challenges facing Ford were immense. Electric vehicles required advanced batteries, and the supply chain for these components was complex and heavily reliant on international partnerships. Critical minerals like lithium, cobalt, and nickel were sourced primarily from countries outside the United States, and processing facilities were overwhelmingly concentrated in Asia. With tariffs driving up costs and domestic infrastructure lagging behind, Ford faced an uphill battle to produce electric vehicles affordably within the United States. At the same time, the company was under intense pressure to compete with Tesla, the undisputed leader in the electric vehicle market. Tesla's dominance was built on innovation and its ability to produce vehicles domestically while maintaining a global footprint. For Ford, keeping pace required significant investments in research, development, and production capabilities. The company's leadership saw the move to international production as a necessary compromise to stay competitive. Internally, the tension was palpable. Executives and employees alike grappled with the implications of the company's decision. While some applauded the leadership's boldness in embracing change, others worried about the potential fallout. Could Ford maintain its position as an American icon while expanding its global operations? Or was this the beginning of an identity crisis for one of the most storied names in automotive history? Trump's next move. Donald Trump, never one to back down from a fight, was plotting his next move. Publicly, he continued to rail against Ford, using the controversy as a platform to rally his supporters and reinforce his vision of economic nationalism. But behind closed doors, his advisors were carefully weighing the options. Should they escalate the confrontation, potentially using regulatory measures to pressure Ford, or should they pivot to other targets, using the conflict as a broader example of corporate disloyalty? The stakes for Trump were high as well. His political brand was built on the promise to protect American workers and industries, and Ford's decision provided an opportunity to reaffirm that message. At the same time, the conflict carried risks. By singling out Ford, Trump risked alienating other business leaders and corporate allies who were wary of his confrontational approach. Striking the right balance between rhetoric and action was critical. One potential avenue for escalation was tariffs. Trump's administration had previously used tariffs as a tool to influence corporate behavior, and there was speculation that he might push for new measures targeting Ford specifically. Another possibility was leveraging regulatory agencies to increase scrutiny on Ford's operations, creating additional hurdles for the company as it pursued its international strategy. But Trump's team also recognized the value of expanding the narrative. By framing the issue as part of a larger struggle against globalization, Trump could broaden his appeal and energize his base. "This isn't just about Ford," he declared at a rally. "This is about standing up to every company that puts profits over patriotism." As Trump ramped up his messaging, Ford braced for impact. The company's leadership knew that the next phase of the conflict would be even more challenging, with the potential for economic and political consequences far beyond their control. Industry on edge. The clash between Ford and Donald Trump sent ripples through the entire automotive industry. Rival manufacturers watched the conflict unfold with a mix of caution and curiosity, aware that the outcome could set a precedent for how companies navigated the intersection of business and politics in the years to come. General Motors, Ford's longtime competitor, issued a carefully worded statement emphasizing their commitment to American manufacturing while avoiding direct commentary on the Ford-Trump dispute. Similarly, other automakers like Stellantis and Toyota remained silent, unwilling to risk drawing Trump's ire. Tesla, on the other hand, seized the moment to promote its American-made electric vehicles, with Chief Executive Officer Elon Musk tweeting, "This is why we build here." Beyond the automakers, the conflict also raised broader questions about the future of the industry. As the transition to electric vehicles accelerated, companies faced mounting pressure to adapt to a rapidly changing market. Sustainability was no longer a choice, but a necessity, and balancing that demand with domestic production presented a daunting challenge. The supply chain disruptions caused by Trump's tariffs added another layer of complexity. Automakers relied on a delicate network of suppliers, many of whom were affected by the increased costs of imported materials. For smaller companies, these challenges were particularly acute, with some struggling to stay afloat amid rising expenses and shifting market demands. Meanwhile, industry analysts speculated about the long-term implications of the Ford-Trump conflict. Would other companies follow Ford's lead, prioritizing global competitiveness over political considerations? Or would the backlash prompt a return to more traditional approaches, with an emphasis on domestic production and national loyalty? As the industry grappled with these questions, one thing was clear: the stakes extended far beyond Ford and Trump. The decisions made in the wake of this conflict would shape the trajectory of the automotive sector for decades to come. The bigger picture. As the battle between Ford and Donald Trump raged on, it became increasingly clear that this was more than just a corporate dispute. It was a microcosm of larger debates about the direction of the American economy and the values that define the nation. For decades, American manufacturing had been a cornerstone of the country's identity, symbolizing strength, ingenuity, and self-reliance. Companies like Ford were not just businesses, they were cultural institutions, representing the best of what the nation had to offer. But the world had changed, and so had the rules of the game. Globalization, technological innovation, and environmental concerns had reshaped the landscape, forcing companies to adapt or risk obsolescence. The Ford-Trump conflict brought these tensions to the forefront, sparking passionate debates across the political spectrum. For some, Ford's decision to expand overseas was a betrayal of American values, a sign that even the most iconic companies were willing to sacrifice their heritage for profit. For others, it was a necessary evolution, a testament to the challenges of competing in a global economy. But beyond the rhetoric, the conflict also highlighted deeper questions about the future of work, technology, and sustainability. As industries like automotive transitioned to electric vehicles, millions of jobs hung in the balance. Could the United States maintain its position as a leader in manufacturing, or would it fall behind in the race for innovation? The answers to these questions would not come easily, but one thing was certain: the decisions made in the coming months and years would have far-reaching consequences, shaping the future of American industry and the lives of workers across the nation. Public opinion erupts. As the Ford-Trump conflict deepened, the American public became increasingly polarized. Across the country, heated debates erupted in living rooms, town halls, and social media platforms. People who had never considered themselves experts on tariffs or supply chains suddenly found themselves taking sides in a battle that felt deeply personal. For Trump supporters, Ford's decision was seen as a betrayal of the values that had built America. Ford was supposed to stand for us, one factory worker declared in an emotional town hall meeting. They built their brand on American pride, and now they're walking away. Protesters gathered outside Ford dealerships, waving signs and chanting slogans calling for the company to bring the jobs back. Online, with users urging a boycott of the company's vehicles. On the other side of the divide, supporters of Ford's move saw the decision as a necessary step forward. Environmental activists praised the company's commitment to sustainability, highlighting the importance of reducing carbon emissions in the face of climate change. This isn't just about profits. One activist wrote on a widely shared social media post, "It's about the future of our planet." This cultural clash spilled over into local communities, especially in areas where Ford's factories and dealerships played a significant role in the economy. In states like Michigan, where Ford's presence was deeply ingrained in the fabric of daily life, people grappled with conflicting emotions. Could they continue to support a company that seemed to be turning its back on its roots? Or was this just the cost of progress in a rapidly changing world? The economic fallout. The economic consequences of the Ford-Trump feud extended far beyond the automaker itself. From factory workers to farmers and small businesses, countless Americans found themselves caught in the crossfire of a battle that felt increasingly abstract but carried tangible consequences. One of the most immediate effects was uncertainty. For workers at Ford's American plants, rumors of layoffs began to circulate. The company had emphasized its continued investment in domestic manufacturing, but the shift toward overseas production left many feeling uneasy. "We've heard promises before," one assembly line worker remarked, "but what happens when it's cheaper to move everything abroad?" Local economies also felt the strain. Towns that relied on Ford plants as economic anchors faced the prospect of declining business activity. Restaurants, repair shops, and other small businesses that catered to factory workers reported a drop in foot traffic as the uncertainty weighed on the community. On a national scale, the controversy reignited debates about tariffs and their impact on American industries. Trump's protectionist policies were designed to boost domestic production, but critics argued that they had backfired, driving up costs for manufacturers like Ford and pushing them toward global markets. Economists pointed to the ripple effects, warning that prolonged conflicts could destabilize supply chains and disrupt the broader economy. But for Ford, the stakes went beyond short-term economic performance. The company's leadership knew that its reputation as a cornerstone of American industry was on the line. Could they weather the storm and emerge stronger, or would the controversy permanently damage their brand? Ford's strategic pivot. Faced with mounting pressure from all sides, Ford doubled down on its commitment to the future. The company's leadership recognized that the conflict with Trump, while significant, was just one piece of a larger puzzle. To secure its place in the rapidly evolving automotive industry, Ford needed to embrace change boldly and decisively. One of the key elements of Ford's strategy was a renewed focus on electric vehicles. The company announced plans to accelerate its timeline for producing electric models, with the goal of having a majority of its fleet powered by electricity within the next decade. This ambitious target was paired with substantial investments in battery technology, with Ford partnering with leading tech firms to develop more efficient and sustainable energy solutions. Ford also sought to reposition itself as a global leader in sustainability. In a high-profile campaign, the company highlighted its efforts to reduce emissions, implement eco-friendly manufacturing practices, and support initiatives aimed at combating climate change. But this wasn't just a branding exercise. Behind the scenes, Ford was working to overhaul its supply chain, investing in domestic facilities for processing critical minerals, and exploring partnerships to secure stable access to essential resources. These efforts were designed to mitigate the risks associated with global production, while demonstrating the company's continued commitment to the United States. At the same time, Ford worked to repair its relationship with American consumers. Executives held town hall meetings in key markets, listening to concerns and answering tough questions. They emphasized that while the company was expanding internationally, its roots remained firmly planted in the United States. The bigger picture. As the Ford-Trump conflict unfolded, it became clear that this was more than just a corporate dispute. It was a reflection of the broader challenges facing the United States as it navigated the 21st century. Globalization, technology, and climate change were reshaping the world, and traditional industries like automotive were at the forefront of this transformation. The clash raised fundamental questions about the future of American manufacturing. For much of the 20th century, companies like Ford had defined what it meant to be made in America. But as supply chains became more complex and global markets more interconnected, the lines between domestic and international blurred. Could companies like Ford adapt to these changes while maintaining their identity? Or was the very idea of American manufacturing being redefined? At the same time, the controversy highlighted the growing importance of sustainability. Electric vehicles represented not just a technological shift, but a cultural one, challenging long-held assumptions about the relationship between industry and the environment. For some, Ford's commitment to electric vehicles was a sign of progress, a bold step toward a greener future. For others, it was a departure from the rugged, gas-powered image that had defined the company for over a century. And then there was the political dimension. The Ford-Trump conflict underscored the deep divides within the country, not just between political parties, but within communities and families. It revealed the tension between tradition and innovation, between the desire to preserve the past and the need to embrace the future. These were not new debates, but they had taken on new urgency in a world that was changing faster than ever before. The tipping point. The showdown between Ford Motor Company and Donald Trump reached a boiling point when Trump announced new measures to penalize companies outsourcing production. In a fiery press conference, he accused Ford of being the poster child for corporate disloyalty, vowing to introduce stricter tariffs and tax penalties targeting automakers moving operations overseas. His words were not just rhetoric, they marked an escalation that threatened to reshape the industry's landscape. Ford's leadership, however, was prepared. In a rare public address, Chief Executive Officer James Farley defended the company's decisions. "We are investing in a future that benefits everyone, our employees, our customers, and our planet," he declared. He pointed out that Ford had committed billions of dollars to electric vehicle plants in Michigan, Tennessee, and Kentucky, underscoring the company's simultaneous focus on domestic production and global competitiveness. Yet Trump's escalating rhetoric had its impact. Boycotts gained momentum, with some dealerships reporting a noticeable dip in sales for Ford vehicles. On social media, the battle lines were clearer than ever, with hashtags and viral posts fueling a heated national debate. While some consumers stood by Ford's vision for a sustainable future, others sided with Trump, viewing the company's actions as a betrayal of its American heritage. Amid the growing tension, Ford announced a new initiative to solidify its commitment to the United States: the creation of a cutting-edge research center in Detroit focused on electric vehicle innovation. The move was seen as a strategic olive branch designed to demonstrate that Ford's global ambitions could coexist with its American roots. For some, this was enough to quell doubts. For others, it was too little, too late. A divided legacy. As the dust began to settle, it was clear that the Ford-Trump saga had left a lasting imprint, not just on the company and its customers, but on the broader narrative of American industry. Ford had staked its claim as a leader in the transition to electric vehicles, but the journey had come at a cost. The conflict had revealed deep divides within the company's consumer base and posed lingering questions about its identity. For Trump, the feud served as a rallying cry, galvanizing his supporters and reinforcing his vision of economic nationalism. Yet, it also highlighted the challenges of navigating a modern economy increasingly driven by globalization and technological change. While his criticism of Ford resonated with many, others questioned whether his approach risked alienating the very industries he sought to protect. The broader implications of the conflict were undeniable. It marked a turning point in the relationship between corporations and political leaders, setting a precedent for how companies balance tradition with innovation. For American industry, it raised a critical question: could progress and patriotism coexist in a world where change was the only constant? As the world watched, one thing was certain: the Ford-Trump saga was not just a story about cars or tariffs. It was a reflection of a nation grappling with its future.